The Icons of Real Estate Podcast. Are you ready to learn the proven money-making secrets from top-producing icon agents? Ready to skyrocket your business? This podcast is for you. Tune in every week with your host, Tomasz Fonseca, and find out how to implement proven strategies to 10 times your business, from $3 million to $30 million in just 12 months. Brought to you by the Masters at Real Estate Marketing, Arter SEO.
Welcome to Icons of Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Patty Teal. Today we have two amazing icons with us, Matt Lesser and Ravi Kantha. So welcome to both of you.
How are you? Thanks for having us.
Oh, we're doing great. Yeah, thank you. So I know that both of you are partners and you've led the team at the Leslie J Garfield Brokerage to be the premier townhouse team. So that's pretty amazing. And you mainly work in Manhattan and Brooklyn. And welcome to you both. And I can't wait to hear more about what you do. Such a unique area. So I don't know who wants to start first, but generally we let you tell your story of how you got into real estate, how it started, where you got interested in the first place, and how you got to where you are today. Matt, would you like to go first?
Sure. So I grew up in Manhattan, not far from where our office is presently on 59th and Park. I got into real estate through a family friend who owned and operated tenement buildings in Spanish Harlem.
Oh.
And for a summer in college, I got a job basically leasing apartments and kind of overseeing some management. So that was, I guess, my first soiree into the real estate world. Very different than what we do now, but for many reasons. But got a little taste. It was lucrative. It was hard work because literally, as we do now, running around all day long, meeting people, showing real estate, trying to network. Circumstances were a little different, but that was the summer. And then I went to Skidmore College up in Saratoga Springs, New York. And my senior year of college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, majored in business and economics, and went to Alumni Services and found a postcard with a job offering at Leslie Garfield. Reason being, Jed Garfield, our now partner, put an ad in that alumni office because he is a Skidmore alumni as well. And I came and interviewed, I think it was July of 2005. They offered me a job. Ballsy, but I told them I wanted to stay in Saratoga for the summer to bartend.
Oh.
And I did that, came back September 2005, and I've been here since. So it's my first job out of college, and 16 years later, continuing at the same firm.
Well, that's great. I really like your story. And Ravi, how about you?
A little bit of a different path. We ended up in a similar place, but I studied political science at Susquehanna University in Central Pennsylvania. It's a small school. I played football there, and I thought I wanted to be an attorney, so I went to law school. Went to Fordham University for law school in Manhattan, and ultimately ended up at the Bronx District Attorney's Office after graduation. Kind of didn't really know what I wanted to do. That was 2010. The job market was horrible and I could get a job there. So I just went with it, and it was a great experience. I enjoyed a lot of the work, but I had a tremendous amount of student loans, upwards of like $300,000, and public service salary wasn't cutting it. And, it was just sort of imposing and hanging over my head. So I figured, let me figure out how to go make some money in the private sector. I got a job working in white collar criminal defense at a boutique firm in downtown Manhattan. Long hours, really kind of realized I wanted to work for myself. I didn't love the work, and I spoke to a few friends who had been in real estate. I got connected and started interviewing with commercial real estate firms. Got really close to taking a job with one, and the manager of that office told me, not a great fit. They're really looking for somebody more junior. I'm happy to bring you on and, have you work with, solo or with someone else who could use some support for now. So I walked out of there a little shell shocked because I was convinced that was the right job for me in real estate.
Oh,
But I met with Leslie Garfield the next day. I'd sent an email. I'd actually I'd cold called the office because I found an 8-year-old job posting. Probably.
oh my gosh.
That.
I'm answering your post 8 years later.
On that same postcard
Yeah.
that I found.
And I called up and just said, "Are you guys hiring?" And they said no. And then I said, "Can I send my resume anyway?" And they gave me an email address, and it was now one of our partners, Rick Bretzfelder. I got an interview with Rick and with Jed the following day from that after that other interview, and met with Matt maybe a week later. And the rest is kind of history. At the time, Matt was looking for some support. His business was growing. I was looking for a place to get some experience, and I'd say you've been doing it, what, about 7 or 8 years at that point?
You've been here 8. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. 8
So-
years later.
Yeah.
I spent most of my time between 8:45 and 5:45, 6 p.m. was working on things Matt was working on. And before that and after that and in between all those things, I was building my own side of the business. And we started with the idea of expanding into Brooklyn. I was Garfield at the time was a Manhattan only firm.
Wow.
We'd had one venture into Brooklyn before I joined the firm that didn't really go smoothly. It was an acquisition of a smaller firm. So ultimately that fizzled, and I was sitting at home trying to figure out a territory in Manhattan that would work, because we're a territory-based firm. Nobody competes with each other. We all split different geographic portions of the
Oh,
city.
that's interesting.
Yeah, it helps create a really nice environment. And
Yeah, not fighting over listings.
exactly. So
No, there's plenty of fighting.
Oh, there's still that. Okay.
but in a collaborative way.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I was sitting at home and my wife said, "Well, what about Brooklyn?" I said, "Well, we don't really do work in Brooklyn." And we opened up a couple listing websites, real estate websites, and looked at the prices and said, "We really should be in Brooklyn."
Oh,
And the next day, Matt and I discussed it. And ultimately we started a Brooklyn business. Took me about 8 months to get my first listing. And then I also fell backwards into a large 9-figure commercial deal by just cold calling an ultra high net worth family, and they ended up buying something significant. And that sort of got the wheels rolling on my real estate career. And at the time, Matt and I were, figuring out what the future looked like for both of us, if he was going to hire somebody and I was going to go off on my own. And we had a conversation about sort of just teaming up, maybe hiring someone to work for the two of us. And flash forward, 8 years later, we have about 4 people working on our team, and we have, I think we've meshed very well. Our businesses have great synergy between them, and we've definitely combined to create a really effective team.
wow, that's great. 9-figure. I'm thinking all those zeros. That's quite a hefty amount. That must have given you a real
Deal.
perk.
First deal paid off the vast majority of those student loans, and the second and third, I think, cleared them. So that was a big reason why I kind of felt real estate might be the right place.
Oh, I can imagine. So the partnership, you just gelled from the very beginning. How are your skills different? Matt, is your skill set very different? Do you work differently than Ravi, or you have a lot of similarities? What would you say?
I think we meshed so well, early on, because our work ethic and the way we kind of go about networking and meeting people and kind of grinding day to day is very similar. I think we grew up, we took different paths to get to the same place.
Mm-hmm.
Ravi, being a former attorney, has been so helpful to our business.
I imagine.
Whether it's just reading documents, writing, negotiating, I've learned a lot from that. I grew up with an athletic background. I think the rejection early on, the persistence, the work ethic, that all really shaped how I go about business day to day. But at the end of the day, I think the way we conduct our business is pretty similar. And I think if you asked our clients and friends and colleagues in the office, they would say
Mhm.
the same.
Yeah, I think a lot of shared skill sets, personalities that are. It's kind of like, it's no different than like finding someone you become good friends with. Matt and I have become really good friends over the
I
years.
bet. Yeah.
Share similar interests. We have similar priorities.
Mm-hmm.
Matt's kids are a couple of years older than my kids, so it's just there's always been things that we had in common, and I think like the business mentality, the workhorse approach of like just keep grinding, keep going, don't stop. I think the share, having an athletic background and being used to, you get knocked down 100 times, but number 101 is what works, and you just keep going until you get there. So that certainly helps. And, I've learned, just as Matt's, mentioned, he's learned things from me. I've learned a lot from Matt. He's spent his whole career in real estate, and, the network Matt has built over the years, the approach to networking has been instrumental in me figuring out and kind of getting my feet under me early in my career. I like to tell people, like, I am not an idea guy. I'm not the person who comes up with something revolutionary. I look at what works and I emulate it and I try to build upon it in my own way. And it's been very effective for me. And frankly, between Matt and our other partners, Jed Garfield, Rick Pretzfelder, I looked at what was working for all of them and I picked up bits and pieces of it. And I think even today when, Matt and I teach, some of the junior brokers on cold calling and business, business etiquette meetings, whatever. And I tell them, I'm like, I've got a piece of all of these people in every call that I make because I've just picked up on habits over the years. That to me is kind of it was how I learned how to function in this business.
I think the way that we run our office is very collaborative, and whether it's Ravi or myself or anyone else in this office, we pick up little bits and pieces from the way people do business, and it's kind of shaped us all to become and conduct our business very similarly. We all have different personalities and everyone does
Sure.
something a little differently, but it's a nice way to run a business.
Mm-hmm.
We are not a big corporate conglomerate. We don't want to be. We specialize in an asset class, and we probably do it better than anyone else. And that's how we will continue to, run our business.
Yeah. So, Ravi, I think mentioned your networking skill and what he learned from you. So, Matt, what are your methods of networking?
Golf.
Golf.
I
Yes,
love
that's a
golf.
big one.
I
Mm-hmm.
love to spend 5 hours with someone that I've never met.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I sometimes feel bad when I'm not in the office and I'm playing golf during the summer because maybe other people think I'm not working, but the reality is 5 hours or 4 hours of golf with someone that maybe you've met once or maybe not even is worth 20 cold calls, 20 years of cold calls. And so that has been, and I actually, I learned how to play golf like 15 years ago. Jed, our partner, suggested that I get into it for just that reason.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
But again, meeting people in the industry, whether it's competitors, whether it's commercial brokers, going to events. I mean, you name it, we've tried it. We will continue to do it. We try to find the interests in our life and figure out a way where you can help someone and they can help you.
Mm-hmm.
And then putting yourself in uncomfortable situations where it's not something really you thought you'd go to or do that ultimately, brings something that you have learned a lot from.
Yeah.
It started though with picking up the phone, cold calling, canvassing a neighborhood, providing information, and that just creates a story and then a relationship and then a piece of business.
Yeah. Well, You don't have to convince me about the golf. My husband was a golfer and he was an entrepreneur as well. And many deals were done on the golf course that used to look like he wasn't working, but in fact, he was playing, but still it worked out to his benefit. So I
Good.
totally understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I, of course, have been to New York, like I think pretty much everybody else in the United States, but I don't know that much about Brooklyn. Could you compare the different attributes of Brooklyn as compared to Manhattan and the price point differences and who lives there? Can you explain that to me?
Well, it's funny you ask that because it seems like a constantly changing thing these days. Brooklyn, I think, 15, 20 years ago started to go through a little bit more of a renaissance in the eyes of the real estate market, at least, where certain neighborhoods became more and more desirable seemingly every year, right? Condo development was accelerating everywhere, along the waterfront especially. There are certain neighborhoods which have been, very nice neighborhoods for a long time. There's others that have been gentrifying and sort of changing over the years. But Brownstone Brooklyn is where we really operate, right? We have a Manhattan side of the business, and then we have basically Brownstone Brooklyn, and that's really the northwest part of Brooklyn. Differences, certainly the landscape is a little different. There's a lot more low-rise architecture in Brooklyn that exists in Manhattan, but it's surrounded by high-rise, especially downtown and in Midtown. There's a lot of similarities aesthetically between downtown Manhattan, specifically the West Village, and Brooklyn Heights, Cobble Hill, some of the neighborhoods that we do a lot of business in. And that's part of the reason our business works really well. We discovered very early on there's a lot of synergy between Manhattan and Brooklyn in those respective markets. People are very often looking in both Manhattan and Brooklyn, shifting from Manhattan to Brooklyn. And frankly, because the school, the private schools admissions sort of drives a lot of the luxury real estate market in New York, we'll see people shift from Brooklyn back to Manhattan sometimes because their kids got into a school in the Upper East Side or the Upper West Side or Riverdale, wherever. So as far as different lifestyle, though, Manhattan's definitely a little bit higher energy. It's louder and not in an obnoxious bad way. It's just not, Brooklyn has less traffic. Brooklyn has less commercial thoroughfare, doesn't have, as many office, skyscrapers, even though there are more seemingly every year. And I think some people like it because the best way I've ever heard it described was Brooklyn is the compromise with the couple like that you see on HGTV on a television show saying, oh, well, he wants to be in the suburbs and she wants to be in the Brooklyn. And
well, that's a good explanation. Yeah.
It's a little more spread out, but it's still very urban. And
right.
And you have a great restaurant scene, you really nice pockets where you can get Michelin star dining, and you feel like you're at the places that maybe if you move from the city and one of the things you loved about it was fine dining, you're still getting that, and it's really nice. And the vast majority of Brownstone Brooklyn is still very easily commutable to Manhattan, both for work and social purposes. So, and we've definitely seen growth both in desirability and pricing. It's interesting because, the first wave of townhouse buyers to Brooklyn from Manhattan, there was always discussion of, there's value, right? Because you get more space for your money.
All right.
For years, and frankly, quite recently, the price disparity between Brooklyn and much of Manhattan has narrowed, especially when you discuss like Park Slope, Brooklyn Heights, Carroll Gardens, Cobble Hill, Boerum Hill. People are paying a lot of money for luxury townhouses in those neighborhoods, and they're outpacing on a price basis, Gramercy, Chelsea, some of the neighborhoods that we've had a stronghold in for years. And what we're seeing is a demographic shifting. People are willing to spend more money in Brooklyn. I could probably give you, 10 or 11 addresses right now where buyers are buying and renovating properties at an all-in basis between 15 and 22, $23 million in some of these neighborhoods.
Ooh.
And, if you said that to someone 10 years ago about Brooklyn, it was laughable. There was maybe one or two streets in the entire borough that would command prices north of $10 million. And they were sporadic, it didn't happen very often. Now it's becoming a much more regular occurrence. And it's flying under the radar a little bit because, a lot of these are there's not many turnkey houses, and a lot of them are being renovated. So you don't really see the amount of money that's being spent all the time. But it's a
Mhm.
real shift, and it's interesting to watch.
That is interesting. And the way you describe it as in between the city and the suburbs, you've got Brooklyn. That's pretty fascinating to think about that. Do you have a lot of young families, a lot of urban professionals, older people, or a little bit of everything?
I think we get a little bit of everything. The demographic always shifts, but I think people like it because it's, certainly there are families that move there find it very family friendly. No question about that. I think neighborhoods that we sell real estate in, they're renowned for their architecture, their beauty, their tree-lined streets. They definitely lend themselves to people who are looking for like a clean, peaceful, fun environment to live in. It's a great place to be.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And what is the median price of a townhouse in the Brooklyn area?
Well, it varies wildly, from neighborhood to neighborhood, but I'd say in the markets we specialize in,
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn Heights, Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens, Park Slope, Forum Hill, like that swath of Brooklyn, you're typically in the median price is probably somewhere around $5 million ish. Brooklyn Heights, Cobble Hill, that probably creeps up to about 6. And by comparison, I think some of on the Upper East Side and City Grove about like 7-ish.
Upper East, probably 7 to 8. I mean, the West Village has had a more concentrated price point, probably a little higher. You don't get the as many 20 to $30 million trades as you do on the Upper East Side, but there's a large part of the market is floating around $10 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So at the beginning of the pandemic, it seems like there was a big rush to get out of the big cities and prices kind of plummeted. And then they went up more than anybody thought they would. And now maybe things are settling down. But if you could describe to me in your words, you know so much more than I do, what's been happening over the last couple of years and where the market is now.
The the pandemic changed our business pretty dramatically. It changed everything dramatically, right? But specific to the townhouse market, there was March and there was April. For us, that was really like on the phone, talking to clients, customers, friends about the market and trying to understand where the market really was. Legally, we weren't allowed to show real estate. There was some nuance there given
Oh,
the type of asset class that we deal in. And then almost the light switch just turned right on. And the townhouse market surged dramatically for a handful of reasons. Privacy, typically more square footage, layouts are more conducive to separation between live and work, outdoor space, opportunity to have office, gym, etc. within a townhouse really resonated with people more so than it ever has. And that allowed us to create a message, and we had the inventory already. It was just a matter of finding the right fit and obviously the right price during a time when things were in flux. It was a matter of, maybe we just had this conversation at lunch today, it was probably 30 days where we didn't know what was going on and some deals were happening, and then right after that the market took off and our deal flow was off to the races. That's been kind of the last, let's call it 24 months or more, 28 months. Over the last, I'd say, month or two, given kind of economic and political uncertainty and news, things have shifted a little bit. Conversations are changing, but we're still active. I would say from an interest rate environment, our buyers are typically less sensitive to interest rates and mortgage rates.
sure. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, it is important, and people borrow money for good reason. But I'd say it's less of a talking point than it is in the middle markets or outside of Manhattan.
Are you saying because a lot of them have enough wealth that they're cash buyers?
Cash buyers, or just again have liquidity where they can borrow against their own assets, so it's actually
I
cheaper
see.
than
Mhm.
where the majority of the market sees interest rates.
It also
Yeah.
depends on the price point. Obviously the higher the price, the less sensitive to both borrowing costs and carry costs that the buyers are, right? And that's a function of wealth as well. And generally I think, Matt kind of Matt mentioned that we've slowed down a little bit, and I think there's definitely a combination of seasonality that
Yeah.
feels like the first season, the first summer since COVID, that
Oh, right.
everybody has resumed somewhat normal, habits in terms of travel and just getting away from work a little bit. And I've got more clients telling me they're away for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 2 weeks now, then we're back a week, then we're gone 2 weeks again. People are traveling a lot, and that's definitely having an impact on it always has an impact on us, but it seems to be a stronger one than usual this year. And definitely some uncertainty in the air. I think a lot of people are trying to figure out, supply demand is still very heavily in favor of sellers across most of our markets. And question is, will that continue to push the market forward against the headwinds that we see right now with the stock market uncertainty that we've experienced, and interest rates possibly creeping up further, inflation being, something that's on everybody's minds. Where does the market go from here, and does the demand for real estate continue to outpace supply even with these things in play?
Yeah. So you guys are so busy. How many listings approximately? And I'm sure there's an ebb and flow, but about how many listings do you have at a time?
25 to
As you
30.
say, ebb and flow. I think probably between 20 and 30 at any given time, with an average price of probably $6 million. The bottom end of our market in the townhouse space is probably around 4, and on the upper end, I mean, we had just under a $60 million transaction this year.
Wow. Well, that's a lot to keep track of.
We've got a good team.
We've got a great team, and that's why we were not doing that kind of business without a team. It's funny, it's always the chicken or egg question in terms of hiring and growing and figuring out support, right? And I think we've found that every time we've taken that step and hired someone new, not only have they become a really great part of the team and contributed, in a really fantastic way, our business has grown accordingly. Seems to keep growing as we've grown. We don't want to be too big. We're still a small boutique operation, and I think our clientele like it that way. But it's been great to see what having the right kind of support around you can do for business.
Ah, that's so interesting. So I didn't brag about you guys too much, and I know you probably had all sorts of awards and top selling things, but I want to give you each chance to tell what your superpower is, your secret sauce, what's your best at. So don't be shy.
I don't think that's like a big secret.
Okay.
It's like, I hate to say it. I think it's what has always worked for me is just the basics of blocking and tackling and being persistent,
Ah,
following up.
mhm.
There's so many people in our industry, whether it's brokers or even people we interview. It's the little things that set you apart from someone else. So I wouldn't say that there's like a magic potion.
No secret sauce. It's just hard work and
It is hard work, and it's not rocket science what we do. Be nice, be persistent, as I say, work harder than your competitor, which sometimes is easy, sometimes it's not. Depends who it is.
uh-huh.
It's not difficult, it's hard. That's what I tell people. It's
Oh, that's interesting.
not rocket science, as Matt said. There's nothing complex about it comes up in the context of transactions all the time when people get heated and arguments happen. Sometimes you tell people, like, pump the brakes. This is easy. Like, this is a residential sale. Like, there's nothing we're not doing like a major company acquisition. There's not like a lot of moving pieces here. It's just keep it simple. And that's how we view our business in general. Blocking and tackling, as Matt said. And one thing that I've noticed, at least, and I don't know if it's a superpower so much as something that I really believe in. Both of our clients have said to both of us and to each other over the years about the other. I've met his clients and he's met mine. That the thing that that we have in common that they like the best is that they they feel that we're genuine, that we're
Mhm.
honest and that we're not BSing, we're not trying to sell anything.
Mhm.
Our job is an advisory role. You can't force somebody, we're dealing with a $10 million house. Like, you're not going to convince somebody to sell that. They're ready to sell it when they're ready to sell it.
Mhm.
The person they go to when they need guidance and support in doing that. And I think if you take that approach to this business, people will appreciate that and remember it when the time comes. And that's something that I noticed, that's how Matt conducted himself as soon as I started. And I sort of brought that over from being an attorney in terms of the fiduciary role and how important it is that you respect that you're supposed to be a guide. You're supposed to be an advisor.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's a great approach to take. And people can make their own decisions and you can help supply them with the information to make a good decision.
That's right.
Oh. So getting close to closing, but I wondered if you could each share what your goals, and maybe it's one goal for the two of you for your real estate goals for this coming year.
Stay
Outside of
close.
selling more real estate.
Yeah.
Which is
Well, it could be selling more real estate. That's it. Just keep going, keep going.
our partner, Jed, would always suggest writing a goal down at the beginning of the year, put it in your wallet, put it in your desk, whatever it is. I actually have never done that. I know he does, but I have consistently tried to sell more expensive real estate as the years go on.
Oh, that's a good
And
strategy, I would think.
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you tell yourself it's going to happen, and it just happens. And I don't know that that needs to be a goal every single year, but it's certainly a goal with many others. We've, a goal a few years ago was to grow our team for more support, but also to have more reach in different neighborhoods that we weren't necessarily experts in, and figured out a way to do that.
Yeah.
I think, continuing, we focus on a very specific market within New York City. New York City is a beast of a real estate market, and there's what we call, countless submarkets, condos, co-ops, neighborhoods, different class buildings, all these things in between. Townhouses account for something like 2 or 3% of the entire market, and our goal as a firm has always been to control that market, to take market share. And I think Matt and I, more specifically for our respective neighborhoods and our business, we just want to be, we want to be the guys that people think of for this thing, and that means selling more of it, having market share. It's very compelling when you're able to say to prospective clients that you sold 30 or 40 or 50% or more of the townhouses in their neighborhood in the last year or 2 years. And for us, that's a goal. We're both competitive. We like to, beat our competition. That's definitely a driving force for the two of us. And I think year to year, it's great to just keep setting new goals and selling a little more, selling something more expensive. There's always something that you can aspire to.
Right. Thank you so much. You two are true icons of real estate, and I so appreciate your time today to be on the show.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Thank you.